if something does go wrong, it's finished. You cannot, and I emphasize, cannot rectify the water contamination. Once it's been contaminated, it's over.
If communities get sick from air pollution and water pollution potentially, and pollution of their foodstuffs, like is being recorded now in the United States, who's going to pay for it?
It's been a long time that they are not working. They are still looking for jobs. So the fracking is going to help the people to get jobs.
This is our last gasp,
For millions of years, the Karoo has remained an untouched paradise. It is one of South Africa's iconic locations. But farmers who have been living here for generations are now under threat, as they are facing a fierce litigation battle with big business over an upcoming new mining process, which is looking at fracking. For 250 million years, cold dusty winds have battered the dry scrub of the Karoo, one of the last untouched wildernesses of Africa. This could all change, because beneath this land is an estimated $100 billion of energy that could be the answer to Africa's problems. To get it, gas companies need to use a mining method called hydraulic fracturing or fracking. It's the same method that has saved the United States economy from recession and made it one of the largest producers of natural gas in the world. It could be used for South Africa, where it's believed there lies an estimated 30 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, enough to fuel the country's economy for up to 30 years. It could also bring thousands of jobs. What is fracking? First, a shaft is drilled kilometers into the earth. From there, the shaft is drilled horizontally through a layer of gas-bearing rock. Imagine this rock has thousands of pockets. Then imagine you have to drill thousands of times to release the gas out from these pockets. The frack occurs when water, sand, and a mix of chemicals is forced through the shaft at very high pressure. The liquid penetrates into the rock and creates fissures that release the gas. The sand prevents the cracks from closing again. A well can use up to 20 million liters of water. The fluid is then pumped out again and the gas can be collected. When the gas runs out, the shaft is sealed and the process begins again. There can be up to 32 wells per drilling pad. Little is known if the waste can reach the Karoo's underground aquifers, which sit at about 200 meters below the surface, but farmers fear drilling, if not regulated and sustained properly, will lead to contamination of borehole water. Big business wants to get its hands on the shale gas, but faces a fight with the people who live here. One of them is Dickie Ogilvie, who has lived in the Karoo all his life. He is one of 3,000 farmers who have stood up and said no to fracking. He believes it could destroy his livelihood. Ogilvie gave up teaching to help his wife Colleen take over her brother's farm at Doorndraai, 100 kilometers southwest of Graaff-Reinet. Here he goes through this year's mohair crop. His biggest fear is for the water fracking needs.
It's dire. It's as simple as that. These guys do. I don't understand that if something does go wrong, it's finished. You cannot, and I emphasize, cannot rectify the water contamination. Once it's been contaminated, it's over. It's as bad as that. We'll have to move off. And it's not only farms, Jay. It involves the towns. It involves the town of Aberdeen, which is reliant on underground water. Graaff-Reinet, reliant on underground water. These towns are reliant on underground water. My small little family, we can make a plan, but we're talking about communities here, that are dependent on water in towns. It's not only the farms. So it's actually a huge problem, and no answers are being given. They're just passing the buck, and there's so much uncertainty regarding this. To me, it's a major worry.
Ogilvie produces mohair crop on his 14,000 hectare farm. The Karoo is the mohair capital of the world, a business that produces 2.4 million kilograms of mohair wool, 60% of the world's mohair.
The minute that these licenses are issued, these corporates, your Shell, Bundu, Falcon, are going to carry on with what they want to do anyway. But it's going to be challenged, as I think a lot of people are well aware of it. through Jonathan Deal and Derek Light, who's representing us in the Karoo here. The minute those licenses are issued, it's going to be challenged in court. So it'll be a holding game again, and we just have to take it from there.
All this is going to cost money. Ogilvy has pledged R3 for every hectare of his 14,000 hectare farm to fight fracking in court. Other farmers have followed suit. It's a legal fight that will go through the doors of this small town lawyer living in Graaff-Reinet. Derek Light and his small office has been tied up with fracking for 3 years. He represents hundreds of landowners, including millionaire Johan Rupert, the second richest man in Africa, who lives not far from here.
Then in March this year, surprisingly, government passed an act, an amendment act which was contrary to all of those, just before the elections, and it remained only then for the president to sign off the act into law. That we understand has been put on hold. And in between we've had to deal with draft amendments to the regulations under NEMA, and the new fracking regulations, the draft regulations were published in October last year. We were able to comment on those, and now we understand that the Minister wants to pass the new regulations sometime in September. And we don't yet know what form they take and what the content of that is. All of this has happened without consultation. The fact that there may now be some consultation in September is to be welcomed, but it seems too late. Decisions have already been taken, amendment acts passed, and regulations probably formulated prior to consultation, which is sad, really. Yeah.
By far their biggest fear is fracking will contaminate the Karoo's borehole water.
One of the objections we had to the environmental management plans of all of the companies that have applied for exploration rights is that they failed to establish baseline information necessary for the establishment of risks and impacts and the management of those risks. Also in respect of water, not only water but also water. Subsequently, the Eastern Cape government has made funding available to the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University in Port Elizabeth to do baseline assessments of groundwater in the Karoo, aimed at informing provincial government better to facilitate proper decision making when they become involved in the process. The baseline testing won't happen overnight. It'll be a 2-3 year project probably, if not longer. It's a massive area. And for baseline testing of groundwater to be effective, you have to take it over a period of time in different seasons and fluctuating rainfall and so on. So the information gathering is a good thing. The timing of it is poor. It's something that the oil companies should have done in the EMP process and failed to do. It's now being done by the taxpayer. But the exercise itself is a good one. The timing is poor. And it may be too late.
550 kilometers from Light, near Montague, lives one of the loudest voices against fracking, Jonathan Deal, a photographer and journalist who has lived on his farm Gecko Rock since 2002. These days, he's CEO of the Treasure Action Karoo Group, one of a handful working against fracking. Strangely enough, he didn't know about fracking until billionaire Rupert spoke out against it in January 2011 in a newspaper article.
My instinct was that it was something that needed to be investigated before we just went ahead, and then started studying it and attending Shell public meetings, which didn't impress me. It was very clear to me, having come from a corporate background, that they were controlling or seeking to control the audience completely, that there was a very specific aim and motivation behind those meetings, and it wasn't to tell the public the truth as far as I was concerned.
Deal's caught up fast. From his 40,000 hectare farm, he has been writing to the presidency, the public protector and gas companies, calling them to think before they frack. He has also spoken out against fracking across the world, including a brief debate with Barack Obama.
Let's say there's fracking, either production or exploration, and something goes wrong with a well 10 years later. and those chemicals migrate 30 kilometers away. So a farmer who runs a very big farming operation, or even a very small one, but who has a right nevertheless to run his operation, ends up with polluted water. Now, what chance has he got of proving that the water that is his water became polluted by a fracking operation 30 or 40 kilometers away? So the baselining, there's a whole lot of guesswork in terms of the baselining. How far away, what is a reasonable radius away from the fracking operation for baselines to be done? And the value of agricultural land is only as good as its water supply.
But what's wrong with allowing the gas companies to explore for shale gas?
If the gas is there and it can be extracted at significant values or levels, it will be a simple step from exploration to full-scale production. This country is not ready from a legal or legislative point of view, or technical scientific point of view, or socio-economic point of view to deal with a technology and an activity on the scope and scale of shale gas mining.
Deal believes one thing: it will be today the Karoo, tomorrow the rest of the country.
But geologically speaking, it's defined by what is known as the Karoo Basin. And the Karoo Basin is where the shales or the gas-bearing shales reside, or what is thought to be the gas-bearing shales. And that extends right into Gauteng and parts of Mpumalanga, and in fact out of the northern borders of South Africa.
When we come back, we will look at the other side of the $100 billion question and see why some people think fracking will give them a future.
The people of South Africa is not working. And just look around me now. There are guys who are standing here who've got they are matriculants, but they are not working. It's been a long time that they are not working. They are still looking for jobs. So the fracking is going to help the people to get jobs.
Coal cannot supply it. If coal will supply it, we will sit in the darkness here and not see our beautiful South African sun anymore.
Over this 250-million-year-old land, farmers have raged at the thought of thousands of fracking wells being pockmarked across the country. They are standing ready to fight it. But there are other people in the Karoo that believe fracking could bring thousands of jobs and be the answer to Africa's energy problems. One of them is 33-year-old Harry Mamesa. He grew up and lives in the township of Ikasi in Graafrenet, in the heart of the Karoo. For 8 years he's worked on the night shift as a petrol station attendant. Life is a struggle.
Right now I'm a petrol attendant, a cashier. I've been working there for 8 years. There's no other job than that in Graafrenet. The people are suffering. As I can tell you, we are almost 30 youth here, and in my area, it's only 2 that is working in my street. The other 28 doesn't have jobs.
Mamesa earns $420 a month, barely enough to feed his wife, children and younger brother. He believes fracking will create 300,000 jobs. His dream is seeing his 19-year-old brother Ayanda one day qualifying as an electrical engineer on a fracking well. Fracking for him is worth the risk.
What I know is that the government will bring a solution for it, even if it's after 5 to 10 years. But we know that there are, for instance, there are diseases that were not cured before, but now they are cured. So the health risk, the health department is going to look for it, that the people don't get hurt of the problem that we are going to face with the fracking.
This is Montague, 550 kilometers from Graafrenet. This town too will change forever. One of the quirks of this debate is that many who will be living on future fracking wells know the least about it.
So have you heard about fracking?
No, not yet, sir. No, I haven't heard about it, anything.
Nothing.
Fracking? No, I mean.
Have you heard of fracking before?
No.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
What would that be? Off?
Fracking.
Fracking? No. No.
Nothing like natural gas, shale gas, anything to do with that? Or shell?
No.
Some are aware that there is a fracking debate. but don't understand how it could impact their homes.
I know that Shell wants to come and do it somewhere in the Karoo. I'm not sure about the exact location. And I'm not sure about the exact implications of it. Well, I know it's very negatively perceived in my community.
Fracking is a way of getting gas and minerals out of the ground without digging large holes or whatever. That's what I understand it is.
And do you know what the implications are for the Karoo?
No, I haven't looked at that yet.
While the select few are outright against it.
What I understand about it is it's pumping chemicals into the earth to release the gas or oil, and the fact that the chemicals that it pumps in poisons the water table and affects either growth in what's growing in the area or animals' water feed, and they could possibly die, or the plants could die.
Down in the earth, very deep.
Yes.
Looking for natural gas, and I think it's terribly wrong.
Terribly wrong?
Yes, it's going to waste the whole Karoo.
What is fracking?
That's where you pump gases under the earth to loosen up whatever is underneath, like oil and gases and so on, for harvesting basically, but it's very bad for the environment.
Very little from a technical perspective. I just understand that they look for natural gas under the ground, take it out, refine it, send it down, out and back in again. Well, the first point of impact is the roads. The roads are in really bad condition, so the trucks go over a pothole. That shakes the foundation. That, of course, affects the houses. This is a very old town, so this road over here was initially just used for suburban traffic. So the houses are built very close to the edge of the road. So we feel the impact. For example, this house that we own here is probably about 120, 130 years old. If you go into the roof, they've already had to put additional trusses on to hold the existing structure up. That's the impact we've had. That's besides the cracks in the foundation and just the outbuildings themselves.
The Karoo stretches across 400,000 square kilometers. Shell, the largest bidder in the Karoo, wants to frack 90,000 square kilometers of this, the size of Sierra Leone. The truth is, no one really knows how much shale gas is in the Karoo, or how many jobs it could create. Should people really be worried? Vladi Altman, an independent geologist from the University of Pretoria, believes that fracking, if done properly, is harmless.
Fracking itself, people talk about fracking, but the fracking itself, it's such a small, tiny part of the entire process. It's actually, and it's not the dangerous part of the entire process. The dangerous part of the entire process is then later the production and the enhanced methods of production. Fracking itself, I think it's a totally wrong discussion about, wrong subject.
Water contamination by drilling through the Karoo's aquifers is also unlikely, says Altman. The mining process is completely misunderstood in the public's eye.
The misconceptions are basically based on poor information. And first of all, it comes from direct comparison to what happens in the US, which I think is not comparable. And secondly, it comes from the perception that the surface and the shallow subsurface have something to do with the shale gas deposits. The shale gas deposits are much, much deeper than anything people usually imagine. And for example, there is a lot of talking about groundwater, contaminating groundwater, or using groundwater, or injecting into the groundwater aquifers. None of that is true.
The German-born professor knows a thing or two about rocks. When he grew up, he collected fossils. Altman even went as far as studying rocks from Mars. Now he works as the Kumberg-Zara Chair in Geodynamics of ore deposits at the university.
Fracking is a very useful and an old technology. It has been used 70 years ago by Halliburton already in the US. And I think 60 or 70% of all oil and gas producing wells are fracked at some stage. And never ever anything happened. Production is starting, and you never produce pure gas or pure oil. You also produce plenty of formation water. And you also take out the water which was pressed down. Up to 50% of that water is being recovered again.
The fracking process has made significant technological steps since it began 70 years ago. Wells can now be spaced further apart because drilling horizontally can now stretch for 5 kilometers. 10 years ago, that same reach was 1 kilometer. But whether farmers like it or not, Altman believes natural gas is the answer to help benefit the country.
The energy demands grow. You know, there are estimates that it might grow up to 60% within the next 30, 40 years, up to 2050. There are estimates that South Africa will need 60% more energy than today. Coal cannot supply it. If coal will supply it, we will sit in the darkness here and not see our beautiful South African sun anymore.
Chris Bredenan thinks natural gas may have captured investor interest, but Africa has its challenges. In his company's 2014 Africa Oil and Gas Review, companies operating in Africa face fraud, corruption, theft, poor infrastructure, and a lack of skills.
The natural gas in the Karoo that everyone talks about, the shale gas play, is a potentially significant and large play. The estimates range around the 390 TCF, and just to put the concept of a TCF of gas in context, 1 TCF was the reserve base that justified the development of the Petro-SA gas to liquids plant. So 390 in that context is a significant number. I think the 390, however, must be taken in the context of where it comes from. It's an estimate based on a desktop study and needs to be proven through exploration activity. When we start looking at the analysis that is being done around the shale gas potential for South Africa, then a lot of estimates, or what a lot of these studies refer to estimates around a 10 or a 20 or a 50 TCF of gas, and even at a 20 TCF of gas, it's a significant play with a significant potential impact on the energy balance in South Africa.
Investors are also concerned about regulatory uncertainty. Regardless, Africa is still a gem to invest in.
Natural gas at the moment only makes up about 3% of our energy mix at present. It is expected that is going to change, and the government has also indicated that they have expressed the need for the energy mix to change with an increased amount for natural gas as well. So the carbon footprint associated with natural gas is proven to be lower than burning coal or any other form of hydrocarbon. So it does influence, and that's part of the reason why the government's also stated an intention to increase the amount of natural gas in the total energy mix. Players like Sasol and Petro-SA that have developed technology specifically aimed at converting gas to liquid fuels that could be leveraged. So there's real expertise and experience in the country proven to utilize gas. I think the other element around it is where I'm saying it's not only the shale play, there are also potential offshore plays for natural gas for South Africa as well.
While some people are preparing for the worst, Matthew Norville of the Wilderness Foundation is desperately trying to keep a small piece of Eden intact.
Particularly in that area, the land has been well looked after for many generations. Some of those farmers are 3rd or 4th generation, and the reason we always like to say that you can build a natural corridor in that area is because the land is still in good condition, and there's a strong affinity with those landowners with the land.
It's a small corner of the Karoo, a corridor of private land that stretches 300,000 hectares from the Kamtaboo National Park in Graaff-Reinet east to the Mountain Zebra National Park.
Yeah, fracking raised its head at almost exactly the same time as we started working in that area on that corridor. So there's no doubt that it influenced the way we worked and the way some of the landowners decided how to collaborate with us. But I think fracking hit a lot of those landowners sort of between the eyes, because they suddenly realized that properties that had been in their families for generations were now under threat. In other words, it was possible that damage would take place that would mean that their children or their children's children wouldn't be able to make a living from farming bearing in mind it's prime natural rangeland grazing sheep and cattle.
The application is currently sitting with the Minister of Environmental Affairs, Edna Molewa. Should fracking go ahead, Norvo fears the worst.
I think it would be impossible. So you maybe on some of the areas which to a layman might just look like a gravel plain, so maybe to somebody that doesn't know the intricacies of that ecosystem might think that it's just a matter of leveling it off and there you go. But it's definitely not like that. There's life at all levels of that, of the soil, and whether it's lichens or the incredible plant diversity, insects, whatever else it happens to be. I don't believe it'll be able to be rehabilitated. And the other thing is, what about the groundwater? What about the residues and the chemicals and oils, etc., that are left behind, that'll poison that soil for generations to come?
Whether it is the fight for survival by farmers and their lands, or the need for the country to supply energy, one thing is for certain: fracking is here to stay.